Listen, I've got to be straight with you about what just happened in Cleveland. The Browns lost to the, and I'm not talking about your typical NFL loss. This was something else entirely. This was the kind of defeat that exposes everything wrong with an organization and what came after the game. That's what has the entire league buzzing right now. The New York Jets demolished Cleveland. Now think about that for a second. The Jets had won exactly 2 games coming into this matchup. 2. They weren't playing like world beaters. They just showed up and picked apart every single weakness the Browns had. And trust me, there were plenty to choose from. But the real story, the thing that's got social media exploding and every NFL analyst scrambling to their microphones, is what Myles Garrett said after the game. He didn't hold back. He didn't use careful language. He went directly at head coach Kevin Stefanski, and it wasn't subtle. This wasn't some minor disagreement that happens behind closed doors and gets smoothed over by Monday. This was a full-scale public confrontation that has everyone asking the same question. Is this locker room about to completely implode? So let me walk you through exactly what happened and why this matters so much. The Browns came into this game struggling, absolutely, but they were still favored to beat a Jets team that's been one of the worst in football all year. This was supposed to be a get-right game. This was supposed to be where Cleveland stopped the free fall, regained some confidence, and showed they still had something to fight for. Instead, what we witnessed was a complete organizational breakdown. The Jets didn't just win, they embarrassed a team that should have beaten them. Every single thing that could go wrong did go wrong. The offense looked completely lost out there. The quarterback play was abysmal. Protection broke down constantly. The play calling was predictable and uninspired. And Kevin Stefanski stood on that sideline making the exact same mistakes he's been making all season long, refusing to adjust, refusing to admit his approach isn't working. Myles Garrett watched all of this happen, and he's had enough. Completely had enough. This guy is one of the premier defensive players in the entire NFL. He's a game wrecker. He's a leader. He puts everything on the field every single Sunday, and he's watching his coach waste an entire season because he won't make necessary changes. So when the media gathered for post-game interviews, Garrett didn't give the standard athlete non-answers. He didn't play it safe. He came out swinging. Garrett made it crystal clear that he doesn't buy Kevin Stefanski's rebuilding narrative. Not for 1 second. Stefanski has been pushing this story that they're rebuilding, that they're developing young players, that they're building for the future, and losses like this are just part of the growing pains. Myles Garrett called that entire narrative garbage. He went out of his way to make it clear that they shouldn't be throwing away a whole season because of some fake rebuilding process that nobody agreed to. You could hear the anger in his voice when he said this, and it's spreading like wildfire across every sports platform right now. If he does that, I think we all look at each other and say we're letting it go. We're sliding into a rebuild instead of finding a way out of the hole we dug ourselves and focusing on this year. Think about that statement for a moment. Myles Garrett, the leader of this defense, is publicly saying the team is giving up on the season, that they should be trying to win instead of rebuilding. That's not just frustration. That's a player publicly questioning his coach's commitment to winning. He tried to stay measured even though he was clearly furious. Frustration is frustration, he said. Do your best not to point fingers. You just do your best to clean up what you can and be part of a solution. We just have to do better. But here's the thing. Garrett was absolutely pointing fingers. Even though he said he was trying not to, he was pointing them directly at Kevin Stefanski and the decisions that are destroying this team. This is massive, people. This is franchise-altering stuff. Kevin Stefanski is now facing the most intense pressure of his career, and honestly, it's completely justified. Losing games is one thing. Every coach loses games. That's part of the job. But when your best player, the unquestioned leader of your defense, the emotional heartbeat of your team calls you out publicly like this, it raises serious questions about the direction of the organization and whether the players still believe in the head coach. Stefanski's rebuilding excuse might not hold up much longer. In fact, based on what Myles Garrett said, it's already completely collapsed in the eyes of the players. It's obvious that Garrett's frustrations mirror what a lot of Browns fans are feeling right now. The fans are exhausted, they're frustrated, they're angry. Every year they're sold hope, and every year this team finds new and creative ways to disappoint them, and now their best defensive player is saying out loud what they've been screaming at their televisions for weeks. When reporters pressed Garrett about his visible frustration and his confrontation with Stefanski, he didn't back down at all. He completely owned his reaction, and his body language told you everything. This is a man who's done. This is a player who's finished playing politics and giving safe answers. Garrett made it abundantly clear that he wants to win, and it bothers him deeply when things don't go the way they should. When asked directly about his visible anger at the loss and at Stefanski, he added, and I'm paraphrasing because you could see the emotion in every word, that people should understand from his reaction that he wants to win. And sometimes that frustration shows itself. That's acceptable, that's fine, because passion matters, because caring matters, because showing you're not satisfied with mediocrity matters. Myles Garrett didn't apologize for what he said. He doubled down on it. He made it plain that his frustration is justified and necessary, and exactly what this team needs right now. There's no question that Garrett and Stefanski are on completely different pages, and it's getting worse by the day. Garrett is making it abundantly clear that he's not giving Stefanski any slack, any time to figure things out, any benefit of the doubt. The rift between them is widening by the hour, and this situation is rapidly becoming a full-blown crisis that could tear this organization apart. This is spiraling fast, and everyone needs to understand that this is a powder keg that could explode at any moment. But here's what makes Myles Garrett's position so compelling and powerful. He's not some young hothead who can't control his emotions. He's not somebody who's always complaining. He's an established veteran, an elite player, and somebody who's earned the right to speak his mind after years of being an excellent leader and performer. When Myles Garrett speaks, people listen. When Myles Garrett is concerned, there's a legitimate reason for it. Myles Garrett believes the team is sliding into a rebuild instead of competing to win now, and that's not just one person's opinion. It reflects what's happening in the locker room. Garrett made it clear that his frustration with Stefanski and his game plan isn't something new or unusual. He said that every great player experiences this kind of frustration at some point in their career. It's not about being afraid or holding back. It's about being honest and authentic. It's about caring enough to speak up when things aren't right. Garrett made it clear that winning games is what matters most to him, and right now, he doesn't believe Stefanski is doing enough to make that happen. His message was direct and unambiguous. He's not hiding anything or sugarcoating what's going on. Garrett's primary objective is to improve the team and ensure they're on the right path to success. He was spot on when he mentioned that many players, from truly elite ones to guys who haven't been around as long, express their frustration in different ways. So as long as you show that you care and back it up with your performance, that frustration is legitimate. And nobody can question that Myles Garrett backs up what he says with what he does. This guy is consistently one of the top defensive players in football. He brings it every Sunday. Opposing offenses have to scheme around him because he's the one player on that defense who can wreck a game plan. So when he speaks, he's earned that right. Now let's talk about why Myles Garrett's frustration with Kevin Stefanski is completely and totally justified. It's not just about losing games, it's the specific decisions that Stefanski is making that are destroying this team's chances of winning. Stefanski's biggest and most glaring problem is that he's kept Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the field despite consistently poor performance. Thompson-Robinson didn't throw any interceptions in this game, but the number of sacks he took is inexcusable, especially in a game of this magnitude. Garrett isn't just noticing that Thompson-Robinson struggles under pressure. Everyone can see how he starts to break down and panic. It's becoming increasingly obvious that his play isn't improving, and it's clear that things aren't getting better. In fact, it's getting worse with each passing week. Thompson-Robinson might start games showing some promise in the first quarter, but by the end of the second quarter, he's completely lost in the pocket. He struggles handling pressure when the defense turns it up. He looks overwhelmed every time they bring heat, and they sack him repeatedly. The film doesn't lie. So, let me give you a specific example. Thompson Robinson took the snap and dropped back slowly on one play. Even though he could have stepped up more quickly and decisively in the pocket, he got stuck in a collapsing pocket when it was time to throw, and the defense closed in. So they sacked him easily. It's obvious that he didn't handle pressure well. His footwork was poor. He looked panicked. His decision-making completely fell apart. That's not acceptable for a quarterback at any level, let alone in the NFL. And this wasn't an isolated incident. This wasn't one bad play in an otherwise solid performance. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was sacked 6 times in this game, 6 times. That number is staggering, and it indicates major problems with either the offensive line, the quarterback's decision-making, or most likely both. And it gets worse. He missed open receivers multiple times throughout the game, resulting in a completion percentage barely above 50%, which is unacceptable for a professional quarterback. It was clear from his throws under pressure that he couldn't handle the moment, that it had become too big for him. Here's another example of how much Thompson-Robinson is struggling. Cedric Tillman, one of their best receivers, was running a route on the sideline and clearly beat the coverage with separation that any NFL quarterback should be able to exploit. Thompson-Robinson just needed to deliver the ball right into Tillman's hands for an easy completion and significant yardage. Instead, he missed the throw by a wide margin. Not by inches, not by a foot, but by yards. The ball sailed way over Tillman's head, making it impossible for him to catch it, turning what should have been an easy completion into an incompletion and a wasted down. Thompson-Robinson missed this opportunity because the defense applied pressure, showing that he couldn't handle it when the heat was on. It's impossible to deny the fact that something needs to change right now. There's no question about it anymore. The evidence is overwhelming, and this is where Kevin Stefanski's stubbornness really becomes inexcusable. Everyone knows that Jameis Winston is on this roster. Everyone understands he's a veteran quarterback with significant experience and capability. Everyone knows he could potentially give this offense the spark they desperately need. Stefanski, however, won't even consider making the switch. Jameis Winston almost certainly would have performed better in this game. Would he have been perfect? Probably not. Would he have struggled at times? Possibly. But would he have been worse than getting sacked 6 times and completing barely half his passes? That's nearly impossible. At minimum, Winston would have brought experience and energy. He would have given the team something to rally around. He would have demonstrated to the players in the locker room that the coaching staff is willing to adjust when things aren't working. Instead, it appears Kevin Stefanski is dug in and won't budge an inch. Stefanski made it abundantly clear in his post-game press conference that he has no intention of changing quarterbacks. Despite all the evidence suggesting he should, despite everyone just watching poor performance, despite his best defensive player publicly calling him out, despite the team having a losing record, Stefanski won't move on from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He says that Thompson-Robinson is young and has the potential to improve. Despite teammates publicly calling him out for his stubbornness, he refuses to back down, and it's affecting the team's performance and ability to win games. Let's examine what he said in that press conference because his words reveal a lot. Stefanski said, "Yes, we're going to stick with Dorian. You can tell he's a young player because you're always working to improve things like that, but our offense needs to play better. We need to be better coaches." All of the above. Look at those words carefully. We need to be better coaches. That's an admission that the coaching isn't good enough. But even though he acknowledges the coaching needs to improve, he's still making the same decisions and expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. But it gets worse. Rather than owning up to his decisions and admitting he might need to make some changes, he just keeps defending them. Kevin Stefanski actually decided to criticize Myles Garrett for speaking out publicly. Think about that for a moment. His best player, his defensive leader, the most important asset on that side of the ball, is frustrated with how the team is performing, and Stefanski's response is to tell him he shouldn't have said anything. That's not leadership. That's deflection. That's ego getting in the way of winning. Stefanski said that leadership in the locker room should be visible and intentional. That's a fair point. But then he went on to critique Garrett's performance, saying that actions sometimes speak louder than words. That was a not-so-subtle dig at Garrett, implying that he should focus on playing better rather than talking. But this is where that logic completely breaks down. Myles Garrett has been exceptional on the field. He's been one of the few bright spots on this entire team. He's constantly generating pressure. He's making plays. He's performing his job at an extremely high level. Stefanski's suggestion that Garrett should let his play do the talking is insulting and tone-deaf. Stefanski still pushed the narrative that Garrett was wrong for speaking up while he was right, even though he knows Garrett has been excellent on the field. It's a bold move, but not in a good way. It shows that the coach cares more about maintaining control and authority than about winning football games. Stefanski is attempting to deflect blame for his own poor decisions onto his players. And that's a dangerous place for any head coach to be, especially when you're losing games you should win. Myles Garrett's frustration with Kevin Stefanski is more than just a player being upset after a tough loss. This is a clear indication that the locker room is on the verge of completely fracturing. It's not something that can be ignored or swept under the rug. When a player like Garrett, who's a leader both on and off the field, publicly criticizes the head coach, when his words and body language show genuine anger, and if this anger isn't addressed, it could destroy the team's cohesion, a divided locker room rarely succeeds. A divided locker room almost always ends in complete disaster. When players lose faith in their coach and start questioning every decision, when they stop believing in the system, everything falls apart. Players stop giving maximum effort, stop communicating, and start looking out for themselves instead of the team. The Browns could be headed for a major internal crisis that makes their on-field struggles look minor if things continue on this trajectory. Kevin Stefanski needs to recognize that things are extremely fragile right now, and if he doesn't acknowledge the growing tension and do something about it, things could spiral completely out of control. It's incredibly risky for him to stick with his current approach, especially when his best players are publicly challenging him. It's crucial for a head coach to be able to adapt and listen to his players to maintain a healthy team environment. This isn't about being weak or caving to pressure. This is about being smart enough to recognize when you're losing the locker room and making necessary adjustments before it's too late. If Stefanski continues ignoring the signs and doesn't make needed changes, things could go very badly, not just for the team's performance, but for his job security. In the volatile world of professional sports, particularly the NFL, coaches who don't adapt and lose the locker room typically don't get second chances to fix things. They get fired. They become cautionary tales. They serve as examples of what not to do. And right now, Kevin Stefanski is walking a tightrope with no safety net. Stefanski's stubbornness could be what brings him down, and he needs to understand that before it's too late. If he doesn't act quickly to repair things with Myles Garrett and address the legitimate concerns being raised, the Browns' internal problems could turn into a full-blown catastrophe. This is the kind of disaster that ends careers and sets franchises back years. Stefanski could lose his job far sooner than he expects. The clock is ticking, and the next steps he takes will determine whether this team can salvage what's left of its season or whether it will completely fall apart due to internal dysfunction. Now, every decision matters. Every press conference is scrutinized. Every game is a referendum on his future. Stefanski is running out of time and allies, especially now that Myles Garrett is openly criticizing his approach. Let's talk about what this means for the entire Cleveland Browns organization, because the implications extend far beyond just this season. When your best defensive player publicly confronts the head coach, it shakes the entire organization. The front office, the owners, the other players are all watching to see how this gets handled. And if Stefanski can't find a way to resolve this conflict with Garrett, it raises questions about whether he can continue leading this team moving forward. Owners and general managers don't like public confrontations. They don't like locker room drama. They don't like anything that interferes with winning football games. The Browns have all three of those things right now in abundance. This isn't just a losing season. This is organizational dysfunction playing out in real time on a national stage, and somebody will have to be held accountable for it. Either the player who spoke up or the coach who wouldn't listen will be proven right. There's also the elephant in the room that nobody wants to discuss, but everyone is thinking about. If Kevin Stefanski and Myles Garrett can't reconcile and this rift continues widening, the Browns may eventually have to choose between them. Do you keep your head coach and risk alienating your best defensive player? Or do you support your star player and bring in a new coach who can work with him? No organization wants to face that choice, but it might become unavoidable if things don't improve quickly. Myles Garrett's frustration makes complete sense and is entirely justified. He's in the prime of his career. He's performing at an elite level. He's doing everything possible to help the team win. And he's watching his coach make the same mistakes repeatedly without adjusting. How long should he stay quiet? How long should he accept losing when he believes there are obvious solutions to win? At some point, being a leader means standing up even when it's uncomfortable, even when it creates conflict, and even when it means challenging your coach. The comparison to other great players who've expressed frustration is particularly relevant here. Garrett mentioned that different players, from elite ones to those who don't stick around as long, show their frustration in various ways. He's absolutely right. We've seen numerous times in NFL history when top players have been frustrated with coaching decisions they disagreed with. Sometimes those players are proven right. Sometimes the coach gets fired and everyone realizes the player was correct all along. Sometimes the player gets traded and succeeds with a new team while the team that kept the coach continues struggling. Garrett said the key is that you have to back it up. You can't just complain, you have to support it with action. You can't criticize others if you're not doing your part. But Myles Garrett is absolutely doing his part. He's one of the best defensive players in football. Offensive coordinators have to game plan around him on every snap because he can single-handedly disrupt a game. So when he speaks, it carries weight. When he complains, it's not empty whining. It's a legitimate call for change from someone who's earned the right to speak up. The Dorian Thompson-Robinson situation remains the central issue in this entire mess. Stefanski's unwavering support for Thompson-Robinson, despite clear evidence that a change needs to happen, is precisely what Garrett is frustrated about. It's not just about one player or one position. It's about a coach who seems more concerned with being right than with winning games. It's about a head coach who won't reconsider a decision even when everyone else can see it's not working. 6 sacks in one game. Completion percentage barely above 50%. Missing open receivers. Poor pocket presence. Panic under pressure. These aren't minor issues that will resolve themselves with more practice. These are fundamental problems that suggest the player isn't ready for this level. And when you have another quarterback on your roster who could potentially help you win more games, it becomes indefensible to continue with the player who's struggling. The Browns organization is at a critical crossroads right now. The tension between Myles Garrett and Kevin Stefanski represents something much larger than just one disagreement. It represents a fundamental disconnect between what the players believe the team needs and what the coaching staff is willing to do. This is about culture. This is about accountability. This is about whether winning is truly the top priority or whether ego and stubbornness have taken over. Every NFL locker room has disagreements. Every team has moments of frustration. But what separates good organizations from dysfunctional ones is how they handle these moments. Do they address them honestly? Do they make necessary adjustments? Do they prioritize winning above everything else? Or do they dig in, defend poor decisions, and let pride destroy what could have been a successful season? The Browns are facing that choice right now, and the decisions they make in the coming days and weeks will define this franchise for years to come. If they continue down this current path, if Stefanski refuses to make changes, if the rift with Garrett continues growing, this could become one of the most dramatic organizational collapses in recent NFL history. But if they can find a way to bridge this gap, if they can make the tough decisions necessary to put the team in the best position to win, there might still be time to salvage something from this season. Myles Garrett has thrown down the gauntlet. He's made his position crystal clear. He wants to win, and he doesn't believe the current approach is getting them there. Now it's up to Kevin Stefanski and the Browns organization to decide how they respond. Will they listen to their best player and make necessary changes, or will they continue defending decisions that clearly aren't working? The answer to that question will determine everything. the future of the coaching staff, the direction of the franchise, and whether this team can avoid a complete meltdown all hang in the balance. The next few weeks in Cleveland are going to be absolutely fascinating to watch, and everyone across the NFL will be paying attention to see how this plays out.